Hello, everyone. D. Alfred Ostrowski. In this recording, I'm going to be giving you a demo/tutorial of using the EtherScan API. I'm going to use the API to take a address for a contract on the Ethernet blockchain and read the amount of Ethereum, as well as a second contract address and read the value of USDCT tokens. I'm going to be using, as usual, the EC2 on Amazon, and I'm going to be using a C5 instance as well as I usually do, and I'll be following my instructions very closely in the GitHub in the README install that will be attached with this video below. I'm going to be using the API in the context of Node.js running an Express Node server. And I'm going to serve it as an endpoint. I'm going to run it from the Node command prompt, and then I'm going to build it into a Docker file and run it as a dockerized application on Amazon EC2. And then I'm going to deploy it to Heroku and present it as a served application on the Heroku server. So to go through this and you're going to need not only your Amazon account, but also an account on the EtherScanIO. I'm not going to go through the creation of that account. It's pretty straightforward. However, I am going to highlight some of the details of obtaining the API key, because I don't want to have my key necessarily exposed, especially on Heroku, not as much on the EtherScan. However, you want to follow best practices, okay, to make sure that they're protected. You also need a Heroku account. Now, in this case, just like with Amazon, you're going to have to secure that account with your credit card information. So keep an eye on billing, be very careful, do a try test method, and make sure that you're not running away with your costs, okay? So just be careful, okay, especially with the API key. Now, I've taken the liberty of already starting my instance, and I have an overview of the configuration that I used. And if you follow any of my prior videos, I stepped from pretty much the allocation of an EC2 instance. You can go back and rewind and look at some of my Solidity Ethereum videos or Aptos blockchain, okay, where I go through more of the steps. But for brevity, I have advanced that a little bit. I already have the PuTTY client, and as you see here, I already have my EC2 C5 large instance up and running. Now, you can get away with a T2 instance in most cases, not necessarily all. I've run into some problems trying to run everything on a T2 free tier instance with this software. So it's not 100% guaranteed. However, that is a free option or very much less cost, okay? I'm using the C5 here because it runs a lot faster, and I have become comfortable using that in a lot of other experiments, and particularly with the Ethereum blockchain based examples. Okay, so I have that up and running. I've installed all the Node and Docker and Heroku software. And again, I'm following just directly. Everything is well documented off my site. And the whole purpose of this, okay, is to leverage Amazon EC2 as a means of technology transfer, you using the exact same configuration that I do. So hopefully in the context of watching this video in the same period of time, you could be up and running with a working example. Unlike, I don't know how many other examples you might find in any other resource where you have to do some type of tweak, okay, to get it to run on your platform. Now, again, as I mentioned, I don't know how many times before, this may not be your best or most favorite platform, okay, but using this platform, it'll at least give you a starting point and a working example, which in my opinion is a lot more self-reinforcing than just having a lot of tutorials piling up that you just we're very close, or you just got to spend an extra day or an extra amount of time to get it to work. Okay, so let's get started. And again, the highlighted steps, the highlighted step here and everything below it, I've already run through, and I put all my references at the bottom of the README install, and I have a couple PowerPoints again. So I also backed up the directory, so you have the user directory, and you're going to have the URL for this is located at the bottom of the video. Okay, so let's go to the command line, and I'm going to pull this off screen here, and you can step through with this with me if you want. I use putty as I usually do. It's antiquated, it's old, but it works, right? So that's why I use it, right? And again, I'm not going to be doing a lot of editing. As you see most of my videos, it's more cut, paste, and explain it. So let's get that Node application up and running, configure it appropriately, run it, and get it to work, dockerize it, run it again, finally deploy to Heroku, demonstrate it, and then we can look at the EtherScan platform and also step through the code line by line. Okay, but let's first, as I like to do, just get it up and running. And first thing I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to make a user directory, and I'm going to call it Alfred O, and I'm going to CD to that directory, and I'm going to create my Node.js application. Again, if I'm just running it standalone just to get it up and running or test it, this is my starting point, right? And really, the only file that I need outside of all the application software that I've installed, right? So here I'm going to cut paste that. I'm just cut pasting from my GitHub. Again, we'll step through that code after we get it up and running. So this is on my GitHub, and as usual, I've X'd out the API key, and I encourage you and I can't express this enough, be super careful with your API keys. This is really not best practice, but in the code you want to put into an environment file, and perhaps use the get-ignore in conjunction with the environment file. If you're going to do application development, constantly backing up to GitHub, which is obviously common practice if you're doing things on the web service. So be careful, okay? And I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to go to the Ethereum, and I've logged in already. Pretty straightforward to get your account. You can just follow through the simple steps. I'm not going to create a brand new account or delete mine to go through this process, but it should be very straightforward. It has been for me. So I clicked on the API keys. Now I am exposing my API key here, right? I'm not too worried about it with EtherScan. However, I will have this API deleted before I publish this video, so not too worried about it. But again, you cannot be too careful with that. So I loaded in my fresh API key, as you will have to. Even if you stole my API key and I even had it up and running, you might have problems running it. But in either case, okay, you're gonna have to load this in because mine will be deleted by the time you access it. And this is all I need to do is configure that file, and I'm gonna exit that. So at this point, I can actually do a Node. I have Node installed, and I ran through those instructions, and I can run that, my little Express server, and we can test it. Okay, now I have some calls. I have some contracts already set up, and this is at the bottom of the README file. I'm going to show you how I stage that, because I'm going to have to grab my DNS here. But before I do that, and always remember, if you're going to set up a server or access your EC2 instance, as I've done in a number of other examples, in particular with working with a decentralized application, I have to set up the appropriate security input rules to allow that access, right? So here I'm going to click into the group and do the edit inbound roles, and kind of root force a little bit, and I set up traffic IP4, and that's going to allow access. It's not going to give me an error. So if you have error with access, that's the first thing you want to check. So now I have that up and running. I can grab the DNS and highlight it. If you have multiple instances going on, you want to make sure that you get the right DNS. And I'm going to cut paste that here, and then I am going to go to the file that I have set this up already, and I'm going to, you can see this right here. So I pull this at the bottom of my README install file. And I have a default localhost. Obviously, you can't run it as localhost. You're going to have to replace it with the DNS. And here, let's make sure I got the right one here. So I don't confuse it. So it's ending with 56. There it is. So I copy that in there. And you don't want to call it HTTPS. You want to do HTTP and at port 8080. Now, when we Dockerize it, we don't have to set up the 8080, at least not from Heroku. We might have to do it for Amazon. Okay, so what's this doing? It's calling it ETH balance to give it a contract. And again, we'll get deep in the weeds with the EtherScanIO. And let's see how it works here. So there we go. So I got a JSON response, and I have an ETH balance associated with that contract. So the value, which I didn't speak towards, and I'm sure you already understand and appreciate at least to some level. Okay, the value of this is right. I can write endpoints and generate APIs and grab all this information and build analytics off the blockchain, follow the transfer of money and transactions, and all the activity is public knowledge, right? And you don't want to just be reading EtherScan. You can use it to build applications and trace any of the activity that's going on in the blockchain, okay, for your whatever purpose that you might be interested in. Okay, so this runs, okay, and I'm going to exit. And to prove that I've exited it, I can just go back here, and I want to make sure, because I'm going to run it as a Dockerized and I don't want to confuse it too. I am going to, so I shut it down, and that's demonstrated by here, because now I'm going to build it as a Dockerized file. Okay, so that was step one. And you want to incrementally step into this. Why? Because it's easier to troubleshoot. Okay, if you got a problem, you want to make sure that your API works before you Dockerize it. You want to make sure the Dockerized application works before you push it to Heroku or anywhere else. Okay, wherever else that you might be interested in putting it. So here I open up a package JSON, and again, if you make file changes to the names and so forth, you're going to have to do it, change it appropriately. Okay, here I have a Node app 2.js. And I have two dependencies, Axios and Express. I'll talk a little bit more about that. For those who are not familiar, Axios is giving me the means to do the REST type call, doing my HTTP GET, and Express is my bare bones Node.js application server. Okay, so I'm going to specify that in the package JSON file and exit that. And go on to my next step here. So again, everything is itemized in my README file. So let's build a Docker file. And I'm gonna, again, all this is backed up on my GitHub. And you can, I'm working directly off of it right now. So pulled in the latest copy of Node, my Node 20. I have a working directory set up as app. I pull in the package JSON, npm install, copy the context, I expose it at port 80, and I run the command node app2.js. Okay, so, and while I'm at it, I'm going to set up the means to do the Heroku build as well. Okay, though I'm not going to immediately need that. It's going to be the following step. So I'm build the YAML file for Heroku. It has similar format to my Docker build. And I just pull in the Docker file and I define it as an app2. I'm sure there's a couple variations you can explore. As usual, this is what worked for me. Okay, and then I'm going to set up a Docker ignore file and define that appropriately as well. Okay. Great. So let's move forward. I'm going to do a Docker build and build this to a Docker file. And my Docker name, I'm going to define it as Alfredo as well. The C5 instance really serves us well here because Docker build on the T2, it's a little bit more laborious. And if you're impatient like me, you hate watching these builds. Okay, so in my opinion, it's worth it. Okay, you can always scale back. And again, I don't leave my C5 instances up and running. I do my work and I back it up to GitHub. And then I go on to other areas. Okay, so another thing I want to point out while this is running is that I can also serve my application directly out of Amazon EC2. I'm looking at Heroku at this point, so I want to take some of my applications, kind of have a separation of work here to keep an eye on my costs. So that's really the primary reason, but you can use Google Cloud, Azure, AWS, Linode, whatever. Okay, but I chose Heroku. Okay, so now I'm going to run. It looked like I got a successful completion here. Let's run it as a dockerized application. Okay, so here I can do the same invocation, and I believe I have to omit the, oh no, I don't. Okay, so now I'm back up. I'm back up and running. But here's the difference. I am running it as a dockerized application, and I prove that by just executing the same, and it didn't respond because that proved that I shut down the node instance. So step 2 is done. Now let's push it to Heroku and we'll be done. Okay, so this is going to go real quick. So next thing I want to do is for Heroku, I have to log in. So here I'm being super protective with my Heroku on here. I'm logged in Heroku here, and I am going to go to my account. And let's see here. I have the key, and I'm not going to reveal my key to you. Okay, I'm just showing you where I got it, and I did some screenshots of this. But this is super important because it is protected by my not protected rather, but secured. Okay, it's secured by my, looking for the right word here. It is secured by my credit card. Okay, so for that reason, it needs to be, we have to be careful with it. Okay, so here I'm going to do the login, and all right, I don't know if maybe I missed the Heroku install. Okay, I may have missed that portion. I was complaining about that, so let's do that. Okay, let's do this. I thought I did that step, and obviously I didn't, so I'm just going to run through that again. And that's not going to take too long. But I have to do the Heroku login. I'm going to do a git type push, git, G-I-T, and that's going to push up my application, my Dockerized application in this case, and push it to the Heroku server, and we can test it from there. And then we can look a little bit at EtherScan, look at those contract addresses, and then break down that code, okay, and go through it line by line. So, and again, the C5 is going to serve as well. Otherwise, I'd have to be pausing out here, but it's going to finish up relatively quickly. There we go. So now I can do the Heroku login. And I revealed my key offline. Okay, so I'm going to enter it in. So this is the account. Now, the password's confusing. When they say password, they don't mean the actual password, okay? They really want that key, and that's what they're looking for. And I'm going to copy that in here. And it didn't accept it here. Let's go through it again. There we go. Whatever reason, maybe got an owl character in there, and it didn't copy over. But I went through these instructions over and over again. So if something glitchy, try it again. It should work. Okay. But here I don't really have a strong explanation as to why it didn't work. the first time through. Okay, so now we can continue. Okay, so here I'm going to do a Heroku create, and that is going to reference that YAML file, and it's going to put it into an application format that's going to be suitable for pushing to Heroku, and it's using a Git type format here, right? So now I'm going to do a git init git, and I'm going to add all my relevant files. And I started this from scratch, okay, going through all the instructions, advertise. And here I do add all, and I'm going to do commit, and it should commit all the total 4 files, right, that are involved in the project. And you can see those here. And I'm going to build it as a branch. And then I've already logged in successfully. Okay, so I'm going to do the remote command and set up my project for the remote push. And finally, I'm going to do a git push. And the Heroku documentation didn't specify this. I actually had to do a head master extra command in here that wasn't advertised. So we're seeing a similar build and push that you have if you're going to push this to, let's say, GitHub and so forth. So let's wait for it. And everything's looking good so far. And it looks like we're almost there. Okay, so let's wait on it. Launching, and it looks good. Let's go to Heroku. And here I'm going to go to my dashboard, which up to this point I have blown everything out, and I have my application here. I can click into it, and I can do an open app, and I don't get anything, okay, but I do get the DNS, okay, and I can grab that DNS and I can configure my build, because the base DNS, right, the API, it's not doing anything unless I specifically put in the endpoint definition, because that's what it's looking for there. Okay, so, and this is really nice because I can just simply use this. I copied a little bit too much in here, so you see when I'm staging this. I can use this to build into my applications and almost take a microservice-based application approach, right? So let's test the Heroku base version doing the same call, and there we go. So I got the US, in this case, I got the USDT balance, and let me see if let me do it for the ETH balance here. So remember that 0.000046. So let's remember that. And another thing I want to point out, the port is embedded in the configuration. Okay, so you don't have to specify the port when I'm staging this command, all right? So let's set up the ETH balance. And again, all this in my examples, you can build your own examples, but this is the starting point. You want to use mine. And these are all at the bottom of the README file. And but you're gonna have to stage it with your own DNS information, right? And I think you know that. So here, once again, the ETH balance in 0.001337. And there you go. So we've been able to build our node application. We've been able to demonstrate it, command line. We built it as a Docker file, demonstrate as a Docker, push it to Heroku and demonstrate that as well. So let's just go to the EtherScan. We're going to dig in the source code in a second here, because let's just take the contract address. And what did we look up? Okay, so and you can look up your own contracts, and if you don't have any prior experience, you're going to want to become comfortable with the EtherScanAPI. If you're an experienced blockchain developer or you're just getting into it, you're going to want to play around and figure out how everything is situated here. But I can see the 0.000137 ETH. Okay, you run it, it may change if the balance of that account changes, then obviously that's going to change. So you want to check it in EtherScan, and that's the truth. Okay, you're doing anything with the testnet or the mainnet, obviously you can, the proof is in it, right? You're going to want to demonstrate this directly against the EtherScan, and that's going to give you the truth, right? That you actually know whether something's changed or if you read it appropriately. Let's pull in that USDT wallet as well. Now, USDT is a token, and that's under ETH balance account. So I'm going to have to go to token holding. If I go down to Tether USDT 0.000046, there you go. So that's the token as well. So we did everything we wanted to do. Let's look at the source code here for the second, okay, and really break it down. So I can go to my source here, and that's app2. I have a pared down version, app.js, and let's step through it line by line. So what did I do? I pulled in my two major libraries. Express gives me a Node server, and it's going to sit there and listen for requests, as any good web server typically does. Axios allows me to do the REST API style get type commands. And here I instantiate in the third line, the Express into app, instantiate my server. I got my API key, which you're going to have to change. And then I use the get command from Axios, and that's going to grab my endpoint at the ETH balance. It's going to read my input variables. And with every server on the web, right, you're going to have a request response object. And I'm going to read that query into the address to check for an appropriate address. Otherwise, I'm going to invoke the EtherScanIO with that account. And I'm going to grab the balance into that specific address using my API key. I'm going to take the response down here, line 23, and I'm going to parse the value. And internally, it's stored as way, and I have to convert to ETH. So I have something that's readable, as I have on the EtherScanIO. And just present it in a JSON format. Otherwise, I flag the error for both the fetching the balance or the internal server error. I do the same thing for the token here as well. In the exact same format, however, I have used DT balance is that variation on the endpoint. So that's about it. All the code reads about exactly the same. And that's about it. So thanks for listening. I hope this helps. If you enjoy this video or any of my other recordings, please like and subscribe. I'm not monetized, so that really motivates me to try to do more content. When I see more likes, then I am more motivated to generate related content. Of course, one of my top priorities here is working in the area of blockchain. Thanks again. Have a great day. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye now.